Hi, it's Mark from Top Local Lead Generation. We're here with Mr. Bernie Pawlik with Pawlik Automotive in Vancouver, 15-time winners of Best Auto Repair in Vancouver. And we're going to be talking about something about Subarus again this week. You had a common failure on Subarus. What are we covering?
We are talking about another oil leak on Subarus. Subarus are awesome cars, but oil leaks are probably one of the more problematic areas on these cars. So we've talked about head gaskets in the past. That's the sort of common and somewhat dreaded leak because it's expensive to fix. But today we have a different oil leak to talk about.
So what kind of an oil leak?
Well, this oil leak is actually kind of an interesting leak. It comes from a part called the oil separator plate. And I'll just pull a picture up of this piece here so you can see it. And just give me a second while I share our screen here. So this is a back view of the engine on the Subaru, and the oil separator plate, the red arrow points to actually where the leak is coming from. This oil separator plate sits in the back of the engine, and this oil, it contains oil among other things. I'll explain the function in a little bit. But it leaks oil, and being plastic, it tends to over time crack, and it'll start leaking oil out the back of the engine.
So what does this oil separator plate do?
Excellent question. Just hang on for a second. I'm going to come back here. Figure out how to work this program. Okay, here I am. I'm back. Yeah, so the oil separator plate, the function of this plate is to is part of the PCV, or the crankcase breathing system, and the crankcase breathing system, like in an engine, the crankcase is moving, and as the engine combustion process occurs, some combustion gases escape past the piston rings and valve guides, and so there's pressure built up in the crankcase, and also some fumes, and so the crankcase breathing system deals with these fumes. And the separator plate, because it's sucking air through the engine, if you don't have a separator plate, then you could end up sucking oil out of the engine and burning it, so the engine could be smoking like crazy. So the separator plate keeps the oil away from the tubes that suck the crankcase gases. Just an interesting few notes about crankcase breathers. I mean, back in the good old days, as I like to say jokingly, 4 or 5 decades back, the way the crankcase gases were dealt with is they just blow out into the environment out of a thing called a road draft tube, and these are like incredibly noxious pollutants. Like, even though there's not a lot of them, they're hundreds of times worse than what comes out of a tailpipe, even in the crappy cars of the past. So they developed a PCV valve system, which like is a crankcase breathing system that self-contains all the gases. The gases are sucked into the engine and burnt up, and so that reduces the pollution. And this is actually one of the, interesting enough, one of the first pollution devices that was ever used on cars. And it's really simple and straightforward, but it's got quite complex, which we can talk about on some other vehicles, because a lot of European cars use a very complex breathing system that has trouble too.
So is this a common leak on Subarus? And how many model years are affected?
Well, I'll talk about model years first. I mean, this breather plate, this design of breather plates used on, they started in 1993 on some models, and it goes all the way up to 2011. How common? You know, we work on a lot of Subarus, and we don't fix a lot of these leaks, but we do a few here and there. I mean, fortunately, it's not too common. But what's annoying about it, from the customer's point of view, is that you have to actually take the transmission out of the engine and pull a clutch. If it's a standard roll, you have to pull the flywheel off, because it's located right at the very back of the engine. It's actually the kind of job that can also be done as a preventative maintenance procedure on certain models with standard transmission when you have the clutch out. I mean, one bonus is if your oil separator plate leaks and you have a standard, it's a good opportunity to inspect the clutch and replace it. All it costs is extra parts at that time and no extra labor, because you've already got it out.
So does this happen on any other cars?
Well, other cars don't use an oil separator plate like the Subaru. This is kind of a unique design, but there's a lot of cars, and I have to say mostly European cars, that use a very complex crankcase breather system. A few cars that come to my mind: Porsche, Boxsters, a lot of BMW 6-cylinders have crankcase breather valves and a lot of tubes and hoses and things, and eventually the valves fail and the engine will start burning oil or it'll idle rough. You can sort of see sometimes, like BMWs, it's a very common to have a crankcase breather fail. The engine will start running rough, it'll idle poorly, and it'll start burning a lot of oil. So while it's not an oil separator piece like this plate, like on the Subaru, it's a similar system and causes problems. I'll just share with you too a picture of the, there's an upgraded version now for this oil separator plate. I don't know what year Subaru started using it, but it's a, this is what we put into the car afterwards. And just a second here, I'm going to find my screen share on this program. Okay. Technical difficulties. Here we go. All right, there we are. Okay, so there. This is the upgraded oil separator plate. You can see that this is made of metal, and it also has some different screws attaching it. And the sealer that's used is a special gasket sealer between the plate and the engine. So with this new one, it'll never leak. And I'm not certain what model year Subaru started using the metal plate, but our car featured as a 99, and it did not have. It has the old plastic plate, and a lot of the older models do. So anytime we take a transmission out, we can have a look, see what kind of plate it is. If it's got the plastic one, we can reinstall it. And here's just a quick photo of our beautiful 1999 Subaru Forester. Classic vehicle. I mean, they've used this style of engine for quite a few years now.
So how would I know if an oil leak on my Subaru was coming from the oil separator plate?
Well, the only way to know is with diagnosis. I'm just going to try to get myself back here, Mark.
You're back.
I'm back? Good. Okay, cool. How would I know if it's the oil separator plate? It's difficult to find this oil leak. This one is typically when it starts leaking, a lot of oil comes out of the engine, and it'll leave some large puddles underneath the car. Now, to find it, basically a proper oil leak diagnosis needs to be done, because the separator plate sits between the engine and transmission, and it's right above a frame rail, and there's some tin plates underneath the engine that cover it. So it requires removing a few items and cleaning things, and we have an inspection camera and some ultraviolet dye we add to engine oil, part of our oil leak diagnosis, where we can find it for sure. But it is a bit of a tricky leak to find. It also sits right above the engine oil pan, so it can be confused with the oil pan gasket, and the oil pan gasket's another leak that happens on Subarus, but it's a relatively inexpensive leak to fix. So, but it's good. It's obviously worth knowing, because even fixing the wrong inexpensive leak is a waste of money.
Great. So we've been talking about Subarus, positive crankcase ventilation systems, and where you can have some interesting oil leaks and failure points that, if you repaired properly, will save you a lot of money and be better for the environment. With Mr. Bernie Pawlik, Pawlik Automotive, you can reach them at pawlikautomotive.com, or give them a call and book your next appointment, 604-327-7112. They've just won for the 15th time Best Auto Repair in Vancouver, as voted by their customers. Thanks, Bernie.
Thanks, Mark. We'll talk to you next week.
Bye.